All right, Marcy, I'd like to start recording. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Salto School District Board of Trustees meeting. I would like to call our meeting to order. A recording and/or broadcast of this meeting is being made at the direction of the board, and the recording and/or broadcast may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. I will now take the roll call. Vladimir Ivanovich.
Here.
Jessica Spicer.
Here.
Brian Johnson.
Here.
Steve Taglio.
Here.
And I, Shelley Sirke, am here also. All right, moving on to our next agenda item. Would any board members like to provide comment on the agenda? Nope. Okay, may I please have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Vladimir. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jessica. Motion to approve tonight's agenda was made by Vladimir and seconded by Jessica. Roll call vote. Vladimir?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
I too vote yes. Motion passes unanimously. On to our next agenda item, closed session report. No action was taken in closed session tonight. Next, superintendent's update. Mr. Baer.
Yeah, good evening. Just a couple of items. There'll be many things covered in the agenda tonight informationally, but wanted to make you aware. Brought to us a couple of years ago was the teacher housing project, staff housing project in Palo Alto, being spearheaded by Supervisor Joe Simidian. That continues to move forward. I know Ricky, who our association president, attended a meeting regarding the project, and I am in contact with the supervisor's office on that. I'm going to talk to one of his staff about perhaps coming to a future meeting to present an update, just so the board understands where that project is. The other item I just want to update you on is we are planning right now our graduation and promotion ceremonies at our school sites, understanding how we can have those in-person events. So stay tuned on that, but I just wanted to make sure the board was aware that we are planning on that. So those dates that are held on your calendar on June 9th, you should keep those on your calendar, because we will be celebrating the success of our students on those days. That's it.
Great, that's awesome. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Do any board members would anyone like to provide comment on the consent agenda? Nope. Okay, then may I please have a motion to approve consent items E1 through E6?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion to approve consent items E1 through E6 was made by Vladimir and seconded by Jessica. We'll now take a roll call vote. Vladimir?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
I too vote yes. Motion passes unanimously. All righty. Moving on to employee requests to address the board. From Los Altos Teachers Association, Roberta Pine.
Good evening, board.
Good evening.
Are you relaxed? Because I'm not. It has been an exhausting beginning again. Teachers are welcoming students. Today it was the junior highs with a slightly different schedule. Last week it was the elementary schools with 100% students back in person. Kids are so excited to be back. Pine PE is back in my classroom, which is fabulous. However, there is much for us to navigate. I just want you to know that it is a lot of heavy lifting. Students are happy and enthusiastic to be with each other, but delivering that thoughtful, purposeful, positive, creative curriculum is still challenging in this pandemic. So I just wanted to let you know that teaching isn't normal, but we are up to the challenge and we are doing our darndest and working our hardest. And teachers are really looking forward to the happy moments, the promotions, like you mentioned, and summer vacation. We are counting the days. So I just want you to know that we are tirelessly working and totally exhausted. But we love what we do and we're there for the students. So there is a lot to discuss for next year as well. And so we want to make sure that teachers are consulted and we're on the forefront of bargaining for anything that's coming down the road next year, because I don't think next year is going to be normal. It's going to be better than this year, but what does that look like yet? We don't know. So please keep that partnership alive with us and keep working to make it a safe and wonderful place for us to work in Los Altos. Thank you so much for all that you do.
Thanks, Roberta. We don't have anyone from the California School Employees Association tonight, so we'll just skip over that. All right, community comments. This time is reserved for citizens and employees to address the board on items that are not on the agenda. The board is not permitted to discuss or take action on non-agenda items, except to instruct the superintendent to review the matter further, report back to the board at a subsequent meeting, or place the matter on a future agenda. The board may make a brief comment or ask clarifying questions. So we will now take public comment. To do so, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Requests received after public comment begins will not be accepted. All right. Now I'll just give it us some time. I don't see any hands going up. Are there any requests? Oh, okay. All right, we have Tal Shalon, and he's our only speaker for public comment. All right, Tal, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah, thank you, Darian Tal Shalom. I appreciate the opportunity. And I just wanted to ask a question. So the high schools are open 5 days, and so is grade school. We have children are enjoying that, but the middle school is still only 2 days a week. And my question really to Ashali and to Steve and Jessica, and also to Robert and Vladimir. My child and the child of many of my friends are in bed in pajamas 3 days a week, pretending to study. And it's not acceptable to us that with the situation occurring as it is now, that everything is open, that there's no plan to at least put them on campus for 4 to 5 days a week, even if it means not changing schedules, which I understand is not something that the teachers are willing to do. But at the very least, one could envision having them do a Zoom in the room on the days that they're supposed to be independent or doing virtual learning, just to get them out of bed and on campus. These kids belong on campus. And for the next 5 weeks, which is almost the length of a summer vacation, they're going to be in bed in pajamas, mentally just, under distress, not where they should be. So please explain to me, why is it that we can't get the middle school children back to class? There's been a petition circulated with 50 or least signatures of parents demanding opening of middle schools. And the results haven't been addressed. We haven't heard what we expect to hear, which is that we will get our kids back on campus, even if it means not adjusting schedules, but getting them into a Zoom environment where they're not in their bed in pajamas and completely disengaged mentally and socially from what's occurring. So why can high school do that, yet middle school is not capable of doing that? We just feel left behind. And it's actually very emotionally stressful for our kids and for us. And we just feel that the issue has been glossed over due to scheduling difficulties. And you can make the accommodation, put them in Zoom in a room for 2 days instead of in bed in their pajamas. Please address that issue. Thank you.
So I will repeat that the board is not permitted to respond to comments made at this time. And this time was for comments on items that are not on tonight's agenda. And school reopening is on tonight's agenda. So thank you, Tal. feel free to email us and we can continue this conversation. All right, moving on to our next agenda item, school reopening update. Staff will review the progress on the return of to campuses. Can we mute Tal's microphone, please? Thank you. Mr. Bear. You're on mute.
Thank you. Good evening again. Marcy will bring up the slides. Wanted to, Sandra and I are gonna cover a few items here on the continued reopening, as Roberta mentioned, of our campuses. So next slide. Some of these are a review for you. These are the dates that our students have begun coming back to campus initially. We know that our TK6 campuses have returned to 5 days a week on campus. Next slide. Again, continuing to update you with the number of positive COVID cases that we have experienced on campus. There have not been a large number, no widespread outbreaks on our campuses. We have had, I believe, one case in each of the last 2 weeks now at two different schools, one case. So it is still something we're being vigilant about, but certainly not nearing anywhere close to the threshold required for that 5% threshold where we would need to consult with Santa Clara County Public Health Department. Next slide. This is just a reminder of the principles that we are operating from, ensuring that our schools are safe places for both students and staff. Health and safety is at the top of the list, as well as the best instructional model that we can provide for students, which we know is in person. Next slide. These are some examples of what has transpired during the course of the year in each of those areas. Again, you saw this last week. And as a reminder, the big shift was the 3-foot distancing change. Next slide. So we are 5 days a week in person on our elementary school campuses. That began the week before, the return from spring break when we came back. So we're in our second week of that. It was a shift. As Roberta mentioned, it was a lift and another change, but the students are really thriving. Next slide. So Sandra, a little bit about junior high school.
Sure. So I wanted to let you know, several weeks ago, we pulled together our original junior high school task force, reopening task force group of teachers and junior high staff to really think about how we might be able to extend the time that students are on campus. And that was kind of the charge from the board. So after meeting a couple of times and going through our negotiation process with LATA, we really landed on the following details here that we wanted to share with you, which started today on campus. So we did extend those in-person school days. So prior to today, students were leaving at 12:15. Now we have extended that school day to 2:25, which allows students to have some social time on campus, a longer lunch time, and then we extended the class periods. And because I don't want to get into the crazy details of schedules, but because we went to 4 normal size class periods per day and a couple of very short class periods, we really reshifted the bell schedule so students have more meaningful time with their teachers. So for our in-person students and our virtual students follow this schedule as well, we shifted that bell schedule. So students who were coming Monday and Tuesday now are coming Monday and Thursday. Those who were coming Thursday. No, I think I might have messed that up a little bit. Yeah, no, sorry. Thursday and Friday are now coming Tuesday and Friday. That's so students aren't only getting their math instruction on a Thursday and Friday, for example. It allows us to really look at the week and get that best instruction for students across the week, and also allows us to maintain that current class roster that we just switched to a couple of weeks ago. So in addition to extending their 2 in-person school days, we also added meetup time. So this was something that teachers used at the end of last year. And it's really a time on a Wednesday after their in-person advisory class where our students have live access, as opposed to having that full asynchronous day. They have an opportunity to check in with each of their teachers in the morning time to get some support. So it's not new instruction, but it's really meant to be practice, support, review, some reteaching as necessary for students. So they do have more live access to their students, to their teachers on Wednesday, and really wanted to make sure the board knows that we made this decision with a whole lot of thinking behind it, and really decided that not having a full schedule change when we had just undergone a full schedule change not that long ago would really have impacted their learning. So we instead really focused on extending the time we have to make it most meaningful for students. And right now our junior highs are in the throes of thinking through graduation and what that's going to look like. And it's very exciting because we are looking forward to celebrating our 8th graders who've had a pretty rough 2 years of what school looks like as compared to normal times. So next slide, I added this was not in the packet that went out. I added this this morning and was thinking about this over the weekend, as we've heard from families just really around like, why are we not going back to that 5-day a week, just like our elementary schools? And, you know, some of the pieces that I've heard are around teachers don't want to come and work 5 days a week. That is not true. Our teachers are absolutely ready and willing to come and work in person 5 days a week. I've heard that it's, you know, the admin team doesn't want to create a whole new schedule. It's too much work. That is absolutely not the rationale. The rationale really lies in this visual. And you might remember this because we've brought this to you a few different times as we've talked about our portrait of a learner. This comes from the Turnaround for Children's group that really supports students who've been through trauma. It actually is a whole initiative that came about as a result of September 11th in New York City. And it really identifies these 5 areas that students need in order to be socially and emotionally well and academically strong. So it's not an either or. It's not that one is more important. It is that all 5 of these work together to make sure that students have a strong experience. And when we think about changing schedules once again, or just reshifting everything, I want you to remember that students thrive when these pieces are in place. And with our last schedule change, we are just getting to the point where students are developing those strong relationships with a new teacher again, that our teachers know our students well enough now with this new schedule change that they can actually provide individualized supports and design the rich instructional experiences that meet the needs of the new students that are in their classroom, and that students feel a sense of safety and belonging. All of this takes time. And that was really what we weighed when we thought about, do we want to do a whole big reshuffle and start over again with all new teachers and all new classroom classes, or do we want to move forward and do what we can with the schedule that was just switched up? And that's really the direction we went. And I do want to let you know that we have been in the process of hiring additional LASD plus staff to be able to extend our offerings at both of our junior high schools. So if we do have parents in the office, in the audience, I suggest that you reach out to your principal so we can be sure that we do provide that LASD plus support on the kind of at-home learning days, that we can accommodate more students. And we're trying to understand the capacity that we do have on campus, but that is an available option to families. Next slide, Marcy. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about our summer program. I will remind you that a summer program is one piece of the ways that we address and support students. And, you know, in the last 2 years or so, we've had a fairly completely redesigned program using our reading intervention program in partnership with our YMCA. We really redesigned that again to meet the need. That has done very well, our LLI and YMCA program, but we didn't think it would be the best way to meet the needs of the students kind of mid and hopefully close to post-pandemic. So we did redesign summer school to look more like a typical school day. So we will be hosting 4 weeks of summer at Santa Rita, and you can see the dates, and it's pretty much a full day, not exactly a full day, but close to a full day. And instead of just focusing on reading intervention, we are bringing in reading phonics for our primary students, and we actually have a phonics component for upper grade students, writing and math instruction on a daily basis. We're using really high quality curriculum that is incredibly engaging for students. So we're using Teachers College has put out summer units of study. It's our typical English language arts curriculum, but they have developed very specific summer units as a result of the pandemic with their best thinking behind what students need in each grade level. Very engaging, just as like a little sneak peek. I mean, our rising kindergartners rising first graders going into first grade are going to be reviewing a lot of their key phonics skills. They're going to be bringing in a stuffy from home, or we will provide a stuffy for them. They will be reading to their stuffy and writing to their stuffy, and it's just really engaging. And, you know, our upper grade students are going to be doing some comic book, graphic novel type of reading and writing. So highly engaging English language arts units. And then we are really excited that we have found some math intervention curriculum called Do the Math. And we will be using that, again, identified from the math expert Marilyn Burns, who's incredible, the key concepts that need to be reviewed in each grade level before students move on. So that will be our primary academic. Oh, Grace Choi will bash me over the head, but our primary academic curriculum. And then I'm going to flip to the very end. We are also each day, students will be engaged in a really exciting STEM project, which I know is also academic in nature. Our students will be designing from our rising first grade 5-year-olds all the way through our 8th grade students, a transport device. We don't want to call it a car because it might not be a car, but a really exciting device that is going to hopefully be able to meet this challenge that we will be giving students. So our rising first graders might be building a little device for their stuffy that they've been reading to and need to get it down and around a track. But lots of great learning, really bringing together the science concepts, the thinking concepts, and the collaboration that students really need to be engaged and want to come to school for another 4 weeks during summertime. So we are serving 160 to 180 students in rising kindergarten through 8th grade. So, you know, 2 years ago, I think we were at about 125 students was what we had been serving each summer with our YMCA program. Last year, we had expected to really shrink that down to about 75 students because we had made such great gains in reading. But this year, we really did widen beyond the typical student that we invite to summer school. So 160 to 180, we are able to invite all students who are significantly below grade level in reading and even less significantly, but still below grade level in reading. Our first round of invitations should go out before the end of this week. And we've been looking at their reading, writing, and math performance throughout the year and really identifying the students who will benefit from an additional month of school. We really chose this July time period because we wanted our teachers and our students to have a little bit of time off after school gets out and a little bit of time off before school begins, because it has been a year. Our teachers are feeling it, certainly, as are our students and our families, I know. So a shorter time period, but a more extended day and a really robust intervention curriculum. So we are excited about our program moving forward this summer. Next slide. Jeff, is this you?
Yep. So this is just a reminder where we want to be and certainly where we're planning to be as we look ahead to the 21-22 school year. Just affirming that we have been working on what the board directed at our last meeting, and that is to plan for 5 days a week in-person instruction on campus as we open for the 21-22 school year in August. So we are going forward with that that in our minds as we plan. Next slide. So these are some of the things we are thinking about. You know, of course, looking at health department distancing guidelines. As a reminder, the California Department of Public Health takes its cues from the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta, but not until we get direction from CDPH are we able to implement. Currently, there's a 3-foot distancing expectation. That's what we are going forward with in our planning right now. Excuse me. Virtual school is unclear whether that is going to be a required element of the 21-22 school year. So that one's a bit up in the air. We are waiting for direction on that and information on that. Currently, the only reason we can offer virtual school this year is because of the governor's directive and the legislative action. So typically we are, according to Education Code, not able to offer a fully virtual school for students. Kids need to be in person in order for their daily attendance to count, if you will. So stay tuned on that. We are watching that closely. As always, we're ready to pivot with any public health guideline change, and we are looking at the modifications necessary to achieve 5 full days. As Sandra said, I think she outlined pretty well why we are sticking with the current plan for the remainder of this year. Next slide. So these are, this is just encapsulated information. Elementary school, we have the 5 days in place, ready to go in the fall. Working on staffing right now. Again, additional planning underway for the 5-day model in junior high. There are but lunch and brunch rotations are going to be necessary for distancing to take place and safety protocols to be followed. It is like elementary in some ways, but different than it in other ways. And we are, I've been getting a lot of questions about after school sports, extracurricular activities. We are looking at how we can have those available next year for students. We know that's an important part of their school day, especially in junior high school. I know the Valley Junior High School Athletic League, of which we are a part, is having those conversations right now regarding after school sports. We're going to be surveying as soon as we find out about the virtual school option. We will be inquiring with our families. Sarah has a little bit more information in the next presentation regarding the want for in-person instruction. Again, we're working on staffing right now and needs based on this enrollment, and we will continue to collaborate and negotiate with both our classified and certificated labor groups. Also mixed in here, you'll be hearing coming up at the end of next month, as Sandra mentioned, the plans for the COVID related money we're getting from the state and federal government. Some of that we think will have some staffing implications, as well as we look at supporting students as they return to campuses full time for a full year. So more to follow on that. Next slide. And so I turn it over to the board for any questions and or discussion.
Great, thank you. Any clarifying questions, Jessica?
Sorry, I definitely have a couple. First, I'll start off with, as it relates to the junior high school. First question, so any sort of change in our schedule, which you have said would be not good for our kids because they've already started with the strong relationships and started to feel safe in their environment. So for the hybrid kids that, they're all safe in that. If we, either way, if we were to change the schedule, does it only affect the hybrid students?
It does not. Actually, the way our junior high master schedule is, our teachers are teaching both virtual students and in-person students. It's a little bit cleaner for the teachers who are working on campus, but when you get to our math classes, for example, those sections will be commingled. So the whole schedule would need to be retooled for everybody, both virtual and in-person students.
So all students would be adversely affected by the change. All right, thank you. Other question, let me just look at my notes here. I guess actually this one will wait for board discussion. Okay, the next question has to do with summer school. Let me just find my notes. How do the invites go out for summer school?
So right now we have our master data list, our huge spreadsheet where students are, after we look at all sorts of different factors, they're put into a first round invitation, a second round invitation, and a third round invitation, because we know, based on need, because we know that not every student we invite in round one is going to accept. So right now our principals are reviewing those lists to make sure that there's not some other information that we don't know about. Maybe a student is moving and they happen to know this. And then invitations will go out via email from our summer school principal, who is Laura Wiley, but that email will go out, email invitation. And then if we don't hear, we expect a 100% return rate. So there's a form that they fill out like, yes, my child will attend, or no, we can't. And if we don't hear, we do phone calls. And if necessary, we do translated phone calls to make sure that everybody understands that their child has been invited to summer school.
And those lists are created by teachers going through their assessments of the children.
Well, they're created centrally at the district office using input from teachers.
Okay,
We look at report cards, we look at assessment scores, we look at all sorts of factors.
One more question for summer school is, you said it's like a normal school day. So I'm assuming there'll be some recess put into the day, some breaks from.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. That is it for my questions right now. Thank
Okay.
you.
Any other clarifying questions from board members? Brian?
Yeah, just in terms of planning for junior high for next year, in addition to a return to on-campus 5 days a week, is there also going to be a return to 2 electives for all the students as part of that?
That is absolutely the
Yes.
goal. And I believe because I talked with our junior high principals last week, they've already surveyed our 6th grade students, or we are in process of surveying 6th grade students around their elective interest.
Great, thanks.
Great. Any other questions? Okay. We will now take public comment on this agenda item. To do so, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Requests received after public comment begins will not be accepted. So I'm gonna give it a few seconds, see 3 hands so far. Are there any additional requests to speak? Okay, so then for public comment, we have Cynthia, Allison, and Megan. Great. Thank you. Oh, each speaker will be given 3 minutes.
Our first speaker is Cynthia Razzo.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, good evening. My question is in regards to summer school. Why limit summer school to just Santa Rita? Why can't we expand to a bigger school or even more schools to reach kids not only that are at risk significantly at lower level, grade level, but kids that are at risk of falling below or even more so during the summer? As we know, during summertime, children regress in normal times. And as is with COVID, kids already lost meaningful learning as is with all this pandemic. So why can't we expand summer for all kids so that all kids can catch up during the summer and not even regress even more so? So my request would be, why can't we just expand the invitation and not just limit it to a certain amount, even if it means to adding other schools to it, not just one. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Our next speaker is Alison Biggs.
Hi, thanks so much for having this meeting tonight. I just wanted to sort of a little bit based on what Cynthia said is that we did note it's happening at Santa Rita, and we love that we get to host it, but we just hope that there'll be separate supplies brought in by the board and everything. We already are facing, as you can imagine, a fundraising crunch at Santa Rita. We're probably going to have to cut back on our budget for a lot of campus improvements and things like that. So if, there's 180 extra kids there for 4 weeks, that will provide some wear and tear on our campus. And so we're just hoping to make sure that that doesn't fall on the parents of the PTA to deal with any problems or damage or anything that might come up. So yeah, it's a lot more students than usual. So we just want to be sure that that's on the board's mind. Thank you.
Thanks, Allison.
Our next speaker is Megan Cravens.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for all the work that all of you are doing. And my question was just regarding, I apologize, I was coming from another meeting too, but I did hear about the summer school. And I'm just wondering for those kids that have medical issues and it's been recommended that they stay home until there's a vaccine, or those that are choosing distance, if there's just any sort of summer support that could be provided virtually. I mean, I know that's a lot to ask, but it may be not as robust as the on-campus Santa Rita, but just something for those kids that aren't able to go into person, and just touch base and your thoughts about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Okay, board members. Would anyone like to provide comment on this agenda item? Jessica?
I think we should try to go through some of their questions because I think maybe it will help clarify. The summer school, it's not just for Santa Rita students, correct? Another question is, you'll be bringing in district resources for the summer school also?
Absolutely. We always work with Principal Land and our summer school principal to make sure that we are bringing in our own supplies. It often includes actually purchasing some additional, we try to leave more than we use over at Santa Rita. We've bought a book room for all of the teachers to use outside of summer school. The LLI curriculum that they use in their intervention program during the school year was purchased. And I know Randy helps support around technology as well, if there's a technology component for summer school, which I don't think it will be a heavy component this year. But yes, we try to be very mindful of that.
And I guess the last question is, as it relates to those students who cannot necessarily come in but need the support, do we have plans for virtual school?
So not for a traditional virtual summer school. We will be updating the independent summer resources that we put out last summer, which are fairly comprehensive in both English and reading, writing, and in math. So families can choose to work through that, but we are not providing a kind of more traditional virtual summer program.
Okay, and that's it for summer school. My question or some thoughts as it relates to the junior high this year, I just wanted to bring up. I have an 8th grader. He is at block. He is doing the hybrid program. So he starts back full day tomorrow and goes also on Friday. I'm wondering if there are ways that we can add some controlled normalcy to their day, whether it be during brunch or lunch, and allow some more at a distance mixing of the cohorts. While we did go with a cohort model, and that is how we built the schedule, it is a free period, and it is not, while it's recommended, it is not required. And I think there are safe ways for us to do this, to bring some sort of normalcy to our junior high students, because they are not getting the 4 days a week, and we can't because it's very complicated. But I want to find out what more we can do in the days that we do have them on campus. So that's my question suggestion, having an 8th grader on campus and knowing other 8th graders on campuses. And I think that's it. Everything else looks great. And I should have started with thank you for everything and all the hard work that went into reopening fully our TK through 6 and the rejiggering of the junior high schedule to give them even more time. I really, really, really appreciate it. From the district level down to the teachers equally, I'm amazed at the work that went into it. So thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. Steve?
So a couple things. One is on the junior high schedule, I thank you for your explanation. I think it actually helps calm a lot of people and help them think through why we're going down a path. And student outcome was really what we were focused on. And I think we've achieved something that actually makes that happen. So thank you for that. The idea of having the additional LASD, I always get the wrong term, but the extra days potential X plus, thank you, plus, is great. And at layering that in, I hadn't heard about that before, so that's helpful. As we're looking, two things for me. One is in the summer program, we will hear that virtual school is not a model moving forward, that will be back to everyone on campus. My concern is that we've had a chunk of the student district population that has been not in a classroom with other kids now for, will be 18 months at that point. Is there anything that we can, once we hear definitively about that, is there a way to put together an addition to summer program to allow some kids to re-experience what it's like to be in a classroom? And maybe some thoughts around whether that's even necessary. I think it is, personally, after 18 months of not being in school. I'd hate to have that impact next fall as those children start being introduced into a classroom. And is there anything we can do about that? It doesn't have to be the full month. I think that probably be an extension, but is there some sort of shorter version of that that we maybe could think about doing? And I'll leave it up to you to decide whether or not that's really necessary, but it seems to me it might be. The other piece that I noticed as we were going through the checklist for next fall, after school programs. We used to have a relationship with the Chinese language school that's got shut down. Is there any discussion about opening that back up again? Other programs that we used to do after school, and as we're putting together that fall window, can we make sure that's part of the model that we're putting together and how we're going to handle that and what that would look like? I think is really important for a lot of our families. And I'm sure as other people talk, I'll have another comment that I want to make and I might circle back, but I'll be quiet for now. Thanks. And I echo what Jessica said. I know this lift to get ourselves open to 5 days a week is huge. I know the re-swizzle going on with the junior high on back of already re-swizzling a little bit is a step, and it's really appreciated that the work and effort that continues to be put forward to make this all happen. I know that's not done lightly and it's done thoughtfully. And I really appreciate the fact that we're not doing Zoom in a room for kids, because I'm not sure there's value. And I've actually heard anecdotally from high school parent families that they're taking their kid back out of school and putting them virtual because it has been disruptive rather than helpful to try to be taught that way. So I only am basing that on some anecdotal evidence, not on anybody coming back and telling me anything other than that. But I appreciate the fact that we're going down a path of mindful, meaningful engagement when we have the children together. So I appreciate that. Thanks.
Ryan?
Yeah, I don't, with respect to summer school, I don't think it was explicitly as part of the presentation. So Jeff or Sandra, I don't know if you want to talk about sort of how we got to 160 to 180 kids as the capacity.
Well,
Sandra can speak to that. Yep.
Sure. Yeah, we looked at both need and staffing. So they go hand in hand, right? We have a limited number of staffing of teachers available, and really trying to be creative in how we use the staffing that we have and making sure that it's meeting the greatest need. So it's kind of a combination.
Right. I mean, as Ms. Pine alluded to at the beginning, right? Like our teachers are exhausted. And so what I've heard anecdotally is that it's even harder than in a normal summer to get the teachers to put their hand up to stay in the classroom, which is completely understandable. And the teacher hiring, I'm sure the teacher hiring outlook being what it is, it's not like we can go out and hire 30 excellent teachers for a month to try to shore things up. So I just wanted to make that a little bit clearer for people who are asking. The other thing I wanted to mention, I think I second most of what Jessica and Steve have said. I do want to recognize that, there's no perfect trade-off here, right? So everything that we're doing with respect to the junior high has pluses and minuses. I know I've heard from parents for whom, 75 minutes is a long time for their kids to be in a single Zoom class. So I wanted to echo, I think what you said in terms of if your kids have needs, you know, we still have 6 weeks. It feels like the end, but that's still a long time. So if your kids are struggling with the new schedule or they have needs, please don't hesitate to reach out to your teachers and principals and the staff, because we don't want to give parents the impression that they just have to suck it up for the last 6 weeks, that if they need extra help, there's help available. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Brian. Vladimir? Well, I gotta say, the slides may be simple, but I know all of the tremendous difficult work that went behind it. So thank you so much. And I think Jessica probably expressed our thanks the best. So just echoing that. I also have a high schooler, and I really want to echo what Steve said. Zoom in a room is just not good. And I like that we are putting a high premium on high quality education. And I don't think that we would be able to keep the high standards of education that we have if we went to Zoom in a room. So, and I've heard other high school parents call it disparagingly other stuff, which I won't repeat here. So that being said, I'm really, really glad to see that we're expanding LASD plus in the junior highs. You know, I think that's going to be really key. And I really strongly recommend that parents look into it, take advantage of it. I assume they would reach out to their principals. Is that what they would do if they wanted? Okay. And just to kind of reiterate, one of the things that I have always appreciated about our summer school is that it's taught by our own LASD teachers, right? So I see you, Steve. So I think that's also really, really important to keep in mind. And it kind of goes back to our emphasis on high quality education. Steve?
Just one other thought. It was around summer school. As those invitations go out to students that we're targeting, it might help our return rate and our acceptance rate if it comes from the teacher and the summer school principal, if that's possible. Because they tend to have a relationship with the existing teacher, and a random district employee may not have the same impact. So something to think about as you're doing that communication, initial communication. It might be great if it came from both. That was the other thought I had.
Great.
All right, any other comments or questions for Jeff and Sandra? All righty, I'm gonna move us along to our next agenda item, parent survey results. Staff will review the parent survey results conducted in March 2021 regarding the educational program during the 2020-21 school year. Mr. Bear.
Yes, thank you, Shelley. I am actually I've asked Sarah Stern-Benoit, our communications director, to actually make this presentation. So Sarah.
Hello, everybody. This survey was actually conducted back in March, really for a way for us to get some great parent feedback on the current school year, to help us not only understand the student experience this year for a return to in-person learning, but also to help us prepare for next year. So Marcy, if you can turn to the next slide. So we did have a lot of participation in this survey. We had over 1,300 responses. Not everybody answered all questions, so you will see a little bit of a discrepancy in that in some of the data, but most people completed the survey, almost 1,100. So the response was actually quite good, which is normal for us in LASD. We do get a lot of parent engagement in these surveys, so that's always helpful for us and for planning purposes and understanding parent opinion. Next slide. We had really good representation in terms of participation among grade levels. Next slide, Marcy. We also did have broad participation across schools. You'll see we did split the question just to, if we do want to dig a little bit deeper into the data and the differences of student experience, we did break apart the data for virtual students, both in the junior high as well as in the elementary. Next slide. So in general, this question, just asking about generally parents' feelings about their child's educational experience, you'll notice that the response was actually largely positive, which was really great to see. The great number is small. I think that that's to be expected considering all of the challenges that we've had, but you know, the next two responses, some challenges overall positive, or that the year has been so-so. I think that's encouraging to see that most people feel that their child has had some positive experiences. And we do, of course, have some responses that the year has been extremely challenging. And as we dig a little deeper into the survey, we'll learn a little bit more about that. Next slide. This was another encouraging slide that we did have a large, over half of our students that regularly follow a regular schedule on those asynchronous days. The sometimes number is also good. I'm impressed with those numbers. We clearly have worked hard to get students to be independent and to follow a regular schedule. And I think we're seeing that reflected in the numbers here. Next slide. The amount of daily time your child spends on schoolwork. Again, this is largely positive, with the majority saying just the right amount. Some saying a little too little work, and a smaller number too much work. I'm not sure how those responses have compared. I know we've done surveys in prior years on homework and other aspects of the workload for students. And so we may want to compare this data to prior years just to see how it compares. Next slide. In general, how helpful has teacher feedback been? Again, I know we have worked very hard on communication and that parent-teacher relationship, home-to-school relationship. I think we're seeing that again reflected here, even in a really challenging year for communication. So again, extremely helpful, very helpful, somewhat helpful. We know that feedback was actually, I think we've seen some positive movement since our early surveys from last year when we started in virtual school, when everyone was virtual. So I think we've made actually some good progress here in terms of parent feedback. Next slide. Do you know how or where to find teacher feedback? Again, overall very positive, that no number, almost 25%. So that number is still a little bit high, but generally still pretty positive. Next number, or next slide. Have you been receiving regular communication from your child's teachers to know what they'll be learning? This is extremely positive. Again, kudos to all those teachers who've been really working hard to keep the communication up this year. That's really fantastic number. Next slide. What does your child need the most support, encouragement with this school year? This is going to vary obviously from student to student, but I think we're seeing some overall themes here. Organization with schoolwork, setting the daily schedule, although we did see those positive numbers earlier. I think we can always do more work in terms of that student independence. The social connection time, we're going to see a little bit more data on that later. We know that this is going to be a challenge in hybrid learning and virtual learning, that social connection, asking for support from the teacher. Again, this number is harder in our virtual environment. So it's not a surprising number, but certainly another focus going into next year. Overall stress. This has been a very stressful year for all of us. So the number is not surprising. And again, we have done a lot of, asked for a lot of feedback from students and from parents and teachers about overall stress levels this year. We know this needs to be a focus for us this year and next year. My child feels connected and supported. This is not the super high number that we hope to have. So we do certainly want to make sure we focus on this. And we know this, again, repeating myself, but a focus that we want going into the upcoming school year. Next slide. So on the positive, I think we'll all be pleased that becoming more self-directed and building independence with schoolwork is excellent. A number there. We've really worked hard at that. And so kudos not just to our teachers, but also to, I know our families have been working really hard to support their students this year. So it's really great to see that that independence has been building. So those other successes, the mirror image really of before, the previous slide, that organization with schoolwork, setting the daily schedule, social connection. And again, we'll dig in a little deeper to those in future slides. Next slide. The academic work, I think that we already looked at this one. Again, overall positive. Next slide. So this is specifically around classroom community building experiences. We do see a high rate of participation in some of the experiences, collaboration with classmates, connection with their teacher, opportunities to socialize outside of the classroom. There is a principal weekly assembly. It looks like there's some decent level of participation in those at the elementary level. Other activities with the principal. The virtual student activities with the junior high, we hadn't had much of that at the time that this survey was delivered. And the same with the jumpstart at the junior high level. So these were sort of in their infancy stages at the time, but we do know that this is an area of focus, needs to be an area of focus for us as we move forward, those community building experiences. Next slide. So here we can see, again, not enough community experiences this year. It's been a real challenge for us. So again, an area of focus. Next slide. So this was an important one. We know parents are really doing a lot of extra work this year, as well as they did last year, to really support their students. We do still see about a third of students able to work independently on schoolwork, a lower level, that manageable level with a few hours per week. But we do see some higher numbers here with working regularly with my child every day and feeling overwhelmed, as well as hiring someone to help with schoolwork. That number still to hire is lower, but we have, of course, heard parent feedback around this topic. So it's good to see the raw data reflected here in the survey. So generally, I would say we do want to make sure, as students are coming back to school in person, that we're really continuing to work on those, building those independent skills, and making sure that they're able to support themselves through the school year. Next slide. This was, again, just drilling down into the tutor question. We do see it is a low number, I guess, relatively speaking, but still we see that there has been a lot of need to support students this year. I think one of the things that we've talked about is making sure that we have really robust assessments for our students as we come back to school next year. And we are already conducting those this year, which is really helping to provide that support for our students who will be attending summer school. But just again, a real reminder that we want to make sure those assessments are in place to make sure that we can support student learning and their independence throughout the year next year. Next slide. We did want to do, as a follow-up to our mental health survey, a real support for our families as this opportunity that we were really publicizing people's involvement, engagement in this survey, to also to provide them with that crisis information, to make sure that if we do have students who are in crisis, that families or parents, for that matter, that they have the information to get that to get support that they need. You'll see the response of the crisis number is very low, but for the small number, we're very pleased that we were able to provide this information. Next slide. Again, for as another follow-up, wanting to make sure that everybody understands they can get in touch with their school psychologist if their student needs assistance. Again, the number's smaller here to contact the school psychologist, but pleased that we were able to provide that information through the survey to the folks who took it. Next slide. So I think the answer is clear that families are really ready for their students to be back to a regular school schedule next year. So almost 94% of our parents are prepared. I think as we continue to hopefully move our way through the public health crisis, and as the situation improves, that those numbers will be even stronger. But very clear statement from our families. So we are certainly on the right track in terms of planning for 5 days a week next year at all grade levels. Next slide. We also talked about asking some questions related to folks' readiness for in-person board meetings. The number of preferring to attend in person is about 12%. We still have a really high number that prefer to attend via Zoom or another virtual platform. So I think folks are not quite ready yet to attend our meetings in person. However, these were results from March. That sentiment could change as the public health crisis improves. Next slide. This is another great slide, considering our focus on communication, where folks are receiving their information. District website, we know that's if people have to be more proactive to get information from the district website, so I would expect that number to be low. It looks like people are really reading the superintendent newsletter and the board highlights, as well as other emails we've been sending out from the school district. We've had a lot of communication to send this year, and most of it has actually been via email. So people are definitely reading those emails. A school principal newsletter, that's another historically a source of information. Emails from my children's teacher, that's also a really high positive number as we've seen in the survey. So again, kudos to those teachers for the communication. School website, again, you have to go to that website in order to get the information. So I think the proactive communication that we've been doing is definitely helping to give folks the information that they need and want from the district and their school site and their teacher. Next slide. We also did a survey. I worked with Elizabeth Leach to get some questions that they wanted to really dig into regarding the virtual school and the experience students are having there. Next slide, Marcy. This was just how they got to the survey, so this question is actually not that important. For those involved in the virtual school, this is how they got to the rest of the survey questions. So next slide. When did your child join the online school? So the majority in the beginning of the school year. We have had others that have transferred in at other points in the year, but the majority, at least who took the survey, began in the beginning of the school year. Next slide. This was a really positive slide. Do you have a sense of how your child is progressing academically? This is really wonderful to see that the communication has been so strong with virtual school parents on their child's academic progress. Next slide. Does your child have enough asynchronous time to complete daily assignments? This was something that was very specific question that they wanted to ask in virtual school. It looks as though the overwhelming feeling is there is enough time. Next slide. For those who answered no, I wanted to understand a little bit more about how much it was beyond the school day. Here you can see majority or almost the majority not working beyond the school day, or at least not much more beyond the school day. But there is a number that are working really beyond the school day. And so this is a question that I know Principal Leach wants to be working on with her staff. Next slide, please. Has your child connected with at least one adult in virtual school? Again, a really positive number to see that students are really connecting either with their teacher or another staff member at the school, even in the 100% virtual model. Next slide, please. Has your child connected with other students in their class? This is clearly a little bit more challenge, but still overwhelmingly positive. So kudos to our virtual school teachers for really working to build that community in the virtual environment. Clearly, there's more work that we can do, and our hope is that as we return to a regular, more normalized school model, that we'll be able to really build those community connections with virtual students and those who've been in blended. Next slide. Does your child attend social opportunities? These are some specific social opportunities available for virtual students. We see the majority, yes, but still a large percentage, no. This may be another area of focus for virtual school to provide some more of those opportunities that maybe could bring more students in. Next slide. Does your child meet regularly in small groups with the teacher? Again, overwhelmingly positive results here. Next slide. Does your child use office hours or have one-on-one meets with the teachers to get assistance? This is a 50-50 split. On this question, I'm not sure whether to read this as a positive or not. I think it really probably depends on the individual student and how much of that one-on-one support that they need from their teacher. So this is one I think that Principal Leach will want to discuss with her staff and figure out what's going on with this one. Next slide. Have you continued to stay connected to your home school? This is also relatively positive. I see almost 70% saying they have continued to stay connected to their home school. We do have a little bit of a higher percentage that I'd probably like to see, of over 30% having more of a challenge connecting to their home school. So this is another kind of area where here at the end of the school year and moving into the next school year, where there could be a focus on building some more of those connections. It could be also, we did look at virtual school, and we can cross reference that with the homeschool. So we may be able to find a pattern there where we can do some more building with that school site, those specific sites. Next slide. Have you maintained that connection? So principal newsletter, lots of people reading that. Homeschool events, PTA meetings, individual communications from the school site was that, and then other, please specify. I haven't dug into that data specifically. It's such a small number. Those are probably more specific to at the parent level, family level. Next slide, please. This is also a really great one to see, given the pandemic situation, that virtual school has mostly been a positive experience for their child, just overwhelmingly positive. So really great to see. So good job at virtual school. Next slide. So looking through the data, overall themes and next steps, I think that the data is very clear that overwhelming majority of our families want to return to a full day per week learning next year. I know that is our plan. So it's great to see this confirmation from our families that are going to 5 days per week at all grade levels is what they support. Students are certainly lacking in community building and that social emotional skill building, those connections with the school community. And this is definitely a byproduct of the online learning in the pandemic situation. This is not, I think, a surprise to any of us. And while academics progress seems strong, certainly from the assessments that we've done so far this year, we definitely are going to need to do some more of those to make sure that students are on track and that we can make sure to provide the academic support to those who need it. So in terms of our next steps, continuing our planning for fall for that 5-day-a-week in-person plan. And then continuing with the professional development and training that we did last year with that focus on community building and social emotional learning. I know we had a lot of, the staff did a lot of work in trauma-based practices and those pieces for this current school year. So continuing to build on that. Planning for the robust assessments in the fall so that we can really have data-based academic support for students who are not meeting grade level standards. And also those that we are doing currently to support those students in who will be attending summer school. And then utilizing all of that data to help develop plans for the use of the state and federal funds that are available to us to help us through the pandemic and getting over the challenges that our students have faced this year. So that is the final slide, and I'll turn it back over to Superintendent Baer.
So Shali, open to the board for any follow-up questions, comments?
Sure. Does anyone have questions for Sarah or Jeff? No? Okay, great. Well, we will now take public comment on this agenda item. To do so, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Requests received after public comment begins will not be accepted. I'm just going to give folks a few seconds to raise their hands. Are there any additional requests to speak? Okay, so it looks like we have Chris and Brooke for public comment. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes.
Our first speaker is Chris Hazelton.
Oh, hello. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. I just wanted to say that I really loved looking at that data as a teacher because sometimes we operate in these worlds where we don't get a lot of feedback from parents. And to see those data points was really encouraging. A lot of the focus that we had on communication and feedback and all of those things were reflected in the data, and that was really nice to see. One comment I wanted to say was with the assessments, I know that we're planning on using iReady, and iReady can be a challenging test for students because it really adapts to their answers. So if they get an answer correct, the test keeps going. And so for students with attention issues or students who just don't really understand the structure of the test, sometimes the scores don't really reflect all of their learning. And so I worry that with iReady, and I know there's not really anything we can do with it, but just kind of keeping that in mind, and maybe when we communicate with parents about the results of iReady, kind of giving a little bit of background on how the test works so that we don't create more stress and angst for our families when they see the results if it just happened to be an off day. Because all of those data points that they have from their key assignments and everything they've been doing throughout the year really do show their transfer and their mastery of those standards. And so one test should not influence all of their views about how this year went. And that said, I do hope that they all do very well, but just kind of putting that out there, because I think for the community, it can be scary to see those numbers and think, oh no, my student lost all of this learning this year. So I just wanted to say that. So thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Our next speaker is Brooke Lopez.
Hi, everyone. Sarah, thank you for the presentation on the survey. It is always super interesting to see what people have to say, and I'm so glad that people are reading newsletters, because as a marketing person in a previous life, I didn't think that was actually possible. So it's wonderful to hear that great news. My question today and my comment or suggestion would be, I'm sitting here wondering about some of these questions on the survey and how they break down by grade level, or even by lower grades and upper grades. If you look at something like the question surrounding how many minutes my child is working on schoolwork after the school day, knowing whether those kids that are, I mean, there's nearly 20% of them are working more than an hour past the school day. And knowing whether those are kindergartners or sixth graders is a very different problem to solve. The same thing applies to if you're staying connected to your homeschool. I would imagine that maybe most of the kids that aren't effectively staying connected to their homeschool may be lower grade kids that don't have their own abilities to set up online play dates with their 5th grade classmates, or go for a bike ride with their 4th grade classmates. So it would be really interesting to see all of this data broken down by either grade level, or at least, TK through 2nd, or however we classify lower grades and upper grades. I think it would be much more actionable if we could have that piece of data.
Okay, thanks, Brooke. Board members, who would like to kick off discussion? Steve?
Remember to unmute myself first. Thank you for the sort of work. I actually agree with what Brooke said, that as you guys are digging further in the data, some understanding of were they virtual, were they live, and grade levels would be hugely, I think, important for you guys to look into that. So I think that's a great idea. The other thing that struck me was actually something she referenced as well, which is a number of people who actually read newsletters, which is exciting because I know we've had issues with that in the past. One of the things I noticed the school districts around us are doing is they're engaging social media in a better, I think a more consistent way than we are. I wouldn't say better, but more consistently. And I'd love to see us adjust our communication plans to start doing that as well. Says right now, we do tend to rely on tools that were in play when my kids were in elementary school, and as Jessica's about to make a face and laugh that we actually had computers back then. The reality is we were doing all that at that time. So it'd be great if we could start to look at, are there tools that came out that we could be leveraging? And that's my only other comment. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Anyone else? Vladimir?
Yeah, I'd just like to, I'd like to caution people not to dig too deeply into the data for a couple of reasons. First one, this is self-reported data, and it's not that people are lying, and it's not that people are trying to game the system or anything like that. But perception is very often not valid, and your impression, at least my impression of what my daughter does, for instance, in 8th grade, is probably very different from what she actually does in 8th grade. So the self-reporting aspect of it is a little bit of an issue in terms of using it to derive actions. The second thing is that once you get down to grade levels, you have maybe 40 to 60 students at a particular grade level at a particular school, and That's if everybody answered. And since not everybody answered, only about, I think about, looks like maybe 40% answered or something like that. That's even less. So the number of students that you have in any particular grade at a particular school is small. And then again, it becomes more and more difficult to the error bars start to increase. That's all I wanted to say. So caution about going down too deeply. It may not be worth the effort.
Thanks, Vladimir. Brian or Jessica? Nope. All right, thank you. I have a few questions actually, but first I want to thank you, Sarah, for all of your hard work, not just in this survey, but in all of the communications efforts that you lead. And this is the positive survey of results around communications are a true testament to your work. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, first, I was really happy to see the positive response to virtual school. That was really heartening to see. The question that I have is question 6, and it leads into question 10. Sarah, you'd mentioned building independent skills and kind of falling into the category of executive functioning skills, right? How can we help our kids develop those skills? So I was interested in the next steps, and we talked about the social emotional learning, but could we possibly put in a component in there to help kids develop more of those independent skills? You know, how to set a time to do this, or writing all your homework down in one place. Those, I mean, they seem like really micro skills, but I think that they're really important to our children's success. So that really jumped out at me when I was looking at it. So maybe that's something that we can address. And I think that's it for me. Vladimir?
I'm sorry, I had one further comment. There were a couple of slides on getting help if either you or your child was in crisis, or even a step before that when they just needed some help. I think it'd be nice if that were a permanent feature of the homepage of Los Altos School District. Because I noticed there's no explicit reference there, and it'd be nice if that were part of the homepage.
Or to Vladimir's point, at least at the bottom of every superintendent newsletter or something, you know, especially as we go through the next school year. It's a good comment, Vladimir. Well, thank you, Sarah. If there's no other comments, I'm going to move us along to our next agenda item. Assessment and accountability update. Mrs. McGonigal will explain the plan for spring assessment to ensure LASD is compliant with the California State Board of Education requirements around assessment and accountability for the 2020-21 school year. Mrs. McGonigal.
Excellent. Well, Mr. Hazelton gave you a little bit of a sneak peek, but I wanted to share tonight what our plans are for the month of May. So next slide, Marcy. It has been, I will just tell you, a slightly complicated and slow moving beast as we've been talking at the state level, the federal level, the county level, and then our district level, and the best way to respond. So there are a few different components that I just wanted to make you aware of. One is the idea of a waiver. So the California State Board of Education did apply for a waiver, not a sweeping waiver, as many people assume that we don't have to do CASP testing, but a really specific waiver around these two pieces. That how can we decouple federal accountability requirements to state testing, and the 95% threshold that has been a challenge for districts for a long time. If you don't have at least 95% of your students testing on the required test, then districts would kind of get into some trouble. So both of those pieces of the waiver were accepted by the federal government. or the US Department of Education, which is great. And they also supported the plan that California State Board of Ed put forward around the requirements around testing. So next slide, Marcy. So essentially, the State Board of Ed said, everybody has to give CASP unless you can't. That was kind of it wasn't an application for a waiver that people can choose whatever they want, but the state really said that California will be administering all of its required assessments unless a district is unable to. And they really pinpointed what that looks like of not being able to. And it's all mostly, there were some other pieces, but these two underlined pieces here around students not having the secure browsers on their computer, because you may or may not know, all the assessments we do at school, a student is able to use any computer, but for our state mandated testing, that testing requires a secure browser. And our tech specialists have a love-hate relationship with this secure browser because it's quite an ordeal to put on a secure browser onto devices. And so the other piece was a lack of sufficient bandwidth. So next slide, Marcy. When we look at our own situation here in LASD, we do actually have a pretty big issue around the requirements of the secure browser in order to be able to do CASP. Nobody knew at the end of last year, state testing had been waived last year, and we deployed hundreds of Chromebooks out to our students so they could do school from home. Those Chromebooks are older Chromebooks, which no longer support the secure browser. So in order for us to actually be able to give the CASP assessment, we would need to bring back all of those Chromebooks, redeploy our more current Chromebooks, and which is a challenge because we are both testing our in-person students and our virtual students. And then of course, we also have some of our families who are using their own personal devices at home, which there is a way for families to download a secure browser, but it is not easy to do. So after looking at this kind of viability within our district, we really did make the determination that it was not viable for us to move forward with CASP. Next slide. So what is our plan? We needed to follow the guidelines that the State Board of Education had approved, very specific criteria that any assessment we choose to administer to our students must follow these 4 guidelines. They have to be aligned with the state standards around ELA and mathematics for that specific grade level. It needs to be an available test. So something needs to be available for us for grades 3 through 8. The assessment that we choose needs to be uniformly administered. So what that means is every 3rd grader across our district needs to be taking the same assessment. They don't need to be taking the same assessment as every 5th grader, but every student within one grade level must have the same test and kind of the same parameters around taking the test. And then lastly, whatever assessment we choose, we need to be able to provide results to parents or guardians. We must be able to get individual student level data, and we must be able to share that information by school, by district, and by student group. So that was the criteria that we were looking at as we brought together our team to look at what our options are. Next slide. Here's what we landed on. So we're bringing back an old friend. So our 3rd and 4th graders will be taking iReady in English Language Arts and Math. We will be training teachers next week, and students will have a window in May that their teachers and schools will determine is their kind of testing window. We know that iReady is aligned to state standards. As Mr. Hazelton said earlier, it is adaptive. It actually goes well beyond the grade level individual grade level standards and can go beyond, but we know that they also provide really nice reports that we can easily send home to parents, and we are able to disaggregate the data and report out to the community. So for 3rd and 4th grade, they're going to stick with iReady. Just so you know, I really see this as a one-time fix to our challenge around CASP. So we're not really moving forward with iReady next year. We're looking at other solutions. You know, you may remember we took some time with iReady for a couple of years and have really found some different assessments, but they don't all fit those criteria. So this is why we're moving forward with iReady. Next slide. Our 5th through 8th graders will have a combination of assessments. They'll be using iReady for English Language Arts, and then they will be using the MDTP, which is the Math Diagnostic Testing Project out of the UC Davis and UC San Diego for math. This is a tool that we're using for math placement. Some of our students in 6th, 7th grade have already taken a version earlier this year, but they will be taking the grade level version that are aligned with their standards this year. And again, it's Common Core aligned, and they have very nice parent reports, and we'll be able to report out in our disaggregated groups as well. Next slide. So what we have left to do to make this happen, like I said, we'll be training teachers on the testing tools. Some of our teachers have already been trained in the MDTP, and iReady training is coming soon. We'll be working with our principals, and schools will develop their testing schedule within the month of May. Our students, of course, will then take their assessments. We will generate our parent reports and send those home before the end of the school year. And then sometime between June or August, and we'll see how big of a challenge it is, we will disaggregate all of that data and report out to the board and the community. Not sure if we'll make our last June board meeting or if that will be the beginning of the school year report. We typically do our spring assessment report in August. So those are our plans, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Do any board members have questions, clarifying questions on the presentation? Nope. Okay, we will now take public comment on this agenda item. To do so, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Requests received after public comment begins will not be accepted. So let's see. Any requests to speak? I don't see any, so I'm gonna go ahead and close public comment.
Charlie, I might just add one thing if you don't mind.
Sure.
I should have added to this slide. So we do have a small number of students, fewer than 10, who take the CAA, the California Adaptive Assessment. And these are students who can't access a typical grade level standardized assessment. So we will have those students taking that assessment if they are in person. So our SDC, our special day class teachers, will be administering those tests for our 3rd through 8th grade students who require that in person. And if a student is virtual, we will not be giving them their assessment this year because it can only be done in person.
Okay.
A little aside.
Thank you. You've thought of everything, Sandra. Board members, any questions? So Sandra. Vladimir?
So this is a question for Sandra. What happens if you don't meet the secure requirements and you don't meet the 4 criteria for an assessment?
Great question, Vladimir. I don't know the answer to that. You know, the CASP police might come and knock on my door at midnight. I don't know. But yeah, I'm following the guidelines set forth for our district.
So I would be remiss in not mentioning again that it is possible to opt out of these tests. Parents can do so by simply letting their principal know.
In
I
writing.
also, I have some technical issues with the test. The first one is, since they're adaptive tests, it's difficult to compare one student against another student because they're not necessarily they may have the same score, but they may not be getting to the same place at the same time and in the same way. That's number one. Number two is I have never seen, and I don't know if they exist or not, any indication of the reliability or the validity of the tests. And I've also never seen any error measurements for the tests. And this applies to iReady, it applies to CAST, it applies to any EP, National Assessment of Educational Progress. All of those are just mysteries as far as testing is concerned. So my recommendation would be to go with whatever teachers think is useful. And if they think those are useful, then great, let's do that. But as far as meeting the state requirements, I think that's that would be very, very low on my personal priority list. So.
Thanks, Vladimir. Any other questions for Sandra? Okay. Well, thank you. Looks like you've got a very solid plan. So that's why we don't have any questions. All right, moving on to our next agenda item. Audited financial report. Mr. Kenyon and the district's auditor will present the 2019-20 audited financial report and audit findings for review and approval. Mr. Kenyon.
Yes, thank you, Shelley. First, I just want to remind you it's an action item, so we're going to need a vote from the board when we finish our presentation and finish discussion. Just a couple quick comments. The 2019-20 school year, which was not this current year, but the year before, was, to state the obvious, a very unusual year. It was bifurcated by the COVID pandemic that struck. As a result of the pandemic, the state changed requirements in certain areas. As an example, attendance requirements changed, instructional minutes requirements changed because of the pandemic and its impact on schools. And in order to, and the state then had to update its audit requirements and give that information out to all the audit firms throughout the state. And as a result, the state changed the deadlines for the audited financials to be completed from normally completed in December. And we would normally bring you a report in January, right, of the following year. It's now April. The state deadline was moved from December to the end of March. So we are 3+ months behind what we normally would be presenting. But with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Paul Pham, who is our lead auditor, and he has the slides to present. And then at the end, we're going to turn it back to you for a discussion and hopefully approval of the audit report. So Paul, if you're there, say yes, and then we can go to the into the slides.
All right, thank you, Randy. And thank you, Superintendent Bear and the Board of Trustees for inviting me out to share with you the results from June 30th, 2020. Could you go to the next slide, please? So I'll start out just kind of covering the audit standards and the scope of our audit. So the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, they issue generally accepted auditing standards in the form of statements of auditing standards that we adhere to in our audit. And the Government Accountability Office, they issue generally accepted governmental auditing standards, which we also adhere to. With respect to the district's state programs, the Education Audit Appeals Panel, they issue an audit report, audit guide every year that we adhere to for the district's state programs. And because the district it has expenditures in excess of 750,000 in federal awards, it is subject to a single audit, which is set by the Office of Budget and Management, and they have a uniform guidance that we adhere to in our audit. And in addition to just the regular district audit, we did have the Proposition 39 bond measure audit, which the Education Audit Appeals Panel puts out, as well as guidelines under the Proposition 39 itself. Next slide, please. And so with our audit process, our objective is really, and our responsibilities as auditor is to provide reasonable assurance that the financial statements were presented in all material respects. And so for this last year, as Randy was explaining, it was a little bit different from what we normally do. We came out at the interim time about halfway through the year, and that was right when the pandemic started. So we ended up having to do an interim audit, part of that remotely. And then at the end of the year, after the books were closed, we performed a remote audit as well to do some standard procedures and finish up some of the compliance work that we had for the district's programs. So here what you'll see is table 4 of your MD&A, and this is a schedule that summarizes the changes in your fund balance. And I just wanted to point out, you'll see the big change in the building fund. That was related to some of the funding sources and stuff related to the purchase of the 10th site. And also here, the general fund, which is the main operating account for the district. You see it's just about $3.5 million increase over last year. Next slide, please. And this schedule is in the audit report as well, and this is the financial trends and analysis. And you'll see here the general fund over the past couple of years has had a decrease, a deficit spending, and then so this last year it did show that increase that I noted earlier. And so the district's reserves are at a healthy 11.2. So being a locally funded district, that's a good reserve to have, to mitigate some of the risks associated with fluctuating property values, should there be any. Next slide, please. And so this is the change in net position. This is related to the district's government-wide statement. So in here, what you'll see is some of the transactions and stuff related to long-term assets and liabilities that you don't see on the district's fund statements. And so the main items I wanted to point out is really related to the purchase of the new site, the funding that came in. So that's kind of the big change you guys had this last year. Next slide, please. And in addition to the district's debt that the district has, the benefit plans also make up a fairly large amount of the district's liabilities. So this schedule here summarizes the benefit plans and liabilities associated with those. These are based on actuarial studies of the district's benefit plans. So it gives you a little recap of how those flow into your liabilities. Next slide, please. Okay, and then lastly, the audit results. And so I'm happy to report the district had a clean audit this year. So congratulations to Randy and his team, and actually departments across the district too. So it did take a coordinated effort. With respect to the financial statements, we issued an unmodified opinion, which means the financial statements were presented fairly in all material respects. In terms of the internal controls over those financial reporting and compliance items, our audit did not identify any deficiencies in internal controls over financial reporting that we considered to be material weaknesses. Our tests disclosed no instances of non-compliance or other matters that are required to be reported under governmental auditing standards. And with respect to compliance, the district complied in all material respects to compliance requirements of state programs. And that's a good thing. This last year, the district was able to clear the state compliance finding from the year before related to the district's comprehensive school safety plan. So congratulations on implementing that corrective action plan. There were no significant uncorrected misstatements. We had no difficulties during the audit other than the COVID-related restrictions. And I wanted to thank Randy and his team and other departments in the district. We do understand that these remote audits do require quite a bit more work on the district's end and a lot more patience. And so we appreciate that from everybody who was involved. Thank you. And lastly, that we had no disagreements with management. So overall, a great audit, and I'll take questions if there are any.
So I just want to interject after Paul's presentation. Board members, you also have a copy of the audited financial report as backup to this agenda item. It's also available for the public. Paul obviously extracted some of the data from that. So Paul and I are here to answer questions and then I'll ask you to take action. Thank you, Paul.
Kelly, you muted.
Thank you. Board members, does anyone have any questions for Paul or Randy on the presentation? Great. All right. Well, we will now take public comment on this agenda item. To do so, members of the public should use the raised hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Requests received after public comment begins will not be accepted. All righty. I'll just give it a few seconds, see if we have any takers. Any requests to speak? Okay, I don't see any requests to speak, so I'm going to close public comment. Okay. Board members, do you want to provide comment on this agenda item? Vladimir.
Finally, something exciting to talk about instead of boring stuff that was. Paul and Randy, just thank you again for great financial management. It's good to hear that there are no disagreements at all with the stuff that was presented.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right.
Can I just add one more thing? I wanted to also let the board know that, that great job on executing that last site purchase and, just reviewing those documents. There was a lot involved there. So congratulations on getting that coordinated and put together. So it's a big undertaking and you guys did a great job there.
Thank you. All righty. May I please have a motion to approve the 2019-2020 audited financial report?
So moved.
Thank you, Vladimir. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jessica. Any further board discussion? Okay. So motion to approve the 2019-2020 audited financial report was made by Vladimir and seconded by Jessica. We'll now do a roll call vote. Jessica.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Vladimir.
Yeah, okay.
I too vote yes. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much, Randy and Paul, for all of your work.
Thank you, Paul, for coming tonight. Thanks, Paul.
Okay, moving on to our next agenda item, resolution number 20/21-12, authorizing procurement of HVAC controls system through competitive negotiation. The Board of Trustees will consider adopting a resolution authorizing the district to issue a request for proposals for an energy controls system. Randy?
Yeah, thank you. As Shelley stated, it's an action item, so looking for your approval hopefully tonight. And I just have a couple of slides as background. So we'll go to the next slide, Marcy. I think I've talked to the board about this in the past, probably pre-pandemic time. It was more of an issue that we were discussing, but we currently have had a control system that is proprietary. It's Siemens controls. They're very expensive to replace. The units start failing. It's really kind of an outdated system that no longer is as flexible and responsive as the newer type of controls. So we're looking at new control systems that are much easier, much more flexible, can provide additional information. Tonight, we're asking you just to approve the resolution that authorizes us to go out for proposals. You're not taking action on any, accepting anything, not making any cost commitments or anything like that. So going to the next slide. So just a reminder, we installed new HVAC units, heating, ventilating, air conditioning units at Almond and Springer as part of our Proposition 39 energy grant, and we put new HVAC units at Egan on the 2-story building. When we replaced all those units, we no longer had controls on these new units, and we did not put the old controls back in, knowing that we were going to try to get newer controls in place as we go forward. And thus these units are now they don't have any controls, and there's 123 of them that are covered by this RFP. So we're looking to get controls on all these units at these 3 schools. And they cover most of the rooms at all 3 of the schools. As an example, they probably don't include the administration offices at both Almond and Springer, but most of the rest of the campuses. Next slide, Marcy. This just talks about the scope that we're asking the proposals to cover, right? They have to procure the units, they have to install them, program them, get them up and running. And when we get the proposals, we'll know the costs. And next slide, Marcy. And the final slide just is a suggested timeline. Tonight is when we would ask you to approve the resolution. Once we get the responses, we'll review them, bring the information back to you in June, and we will let you evaluate and decide whether or not to commit to one of the vendors to install the systems, hopefully to get the work done during the summer. So turn it back to you, Shali, because I think that's the end of the presentation.
Great, thank you, Randy. Any comments on the presentation? Randy? Jessica?
That's a quick and probably stupid question. How have the systems been working without controls?
Well, the systems work. We just can't control how often they're on and off and settings and whatnot.
Randy, this is about central controls, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just needed that.
Yes, sorry. The individual classrooms, teachers can adjust them. We don't have any central control over that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So for example, things could be left on over the weekend, right? Which does happen.
Vladimir?
Randy, you mentioned that the Siemens Systems is proprietary, and that you want to move away from that. Could you explain a little bit more about what's not proprietary? I mean, I don't understand what's not proprietary about the systems that we're thinking of installing.
So with Siemens, only Siemens people can work on them. Only Siemens products work with them. When they have parts fail, it's only Siemens parts. Non-proprietary, these units can be worked on by a variety of different contractors, things like that, Vladimir.
Okay, thanks. There was also, you mentioned, I think, on one of the slides about programming. Is that, what is the extent of that programming need, do you think?
So think of it like your home thermostats essentially work like thermostats. So you can program when to have the heat or the air conditioning come on, what level, when to go off, all all that kind of stuff.
So
The
you're not-
units that, sorry, go ahead.
No, finish, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, the units that nowadays, one of the units that we're looking at very closely has been installed at several districts. They also have CO2 readings. So even when we no longer need the ones that we have during the pandemic, we'll have these thermostats that can continue to monitor airflow.
Okay, so, but you're not talking about somebody writing a C program?
No.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions before we go to public comment? Okay, we will now take public comment on this agenda item. To do so, members of the public should use the raised hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Requests received after public comment begins will not be accepted. Let me just pull up my participant list. Okay, I see one hand up. I'm gonna just give it a few more seconds to see if there are any more. Okay, looks like we've got one taker for public comment. Megan.
First speaker is Megan Cravens.
Thank you. I just curious, there were 3 schools that got the updated systems, and I was just wondering about the other schools, if they already have the updated system and the ones that can potentially monitor airflow and are helping with decreasing virus spread, COVID spread, etc.
Thank you, Megan.
Yeah, you probably want me to at least comment about that question, even though it's not supposed to respond to it. All of our HVAC systems have been inspected, repaired, made as working in perfect working condition due to the pandemic. We did that. We spent a lot of time last summer, invested time and money with our engineers and the HVAC professionals to do that. We do have constant monitoring. Every room in every school, every unit in every school is inspected. This is more about these HVAC units that were replaced were just for energy efficiency, not for safety reasons, that were done a couple of years ago at Almond and Springer. And they were units that were failing more than anything else. All the rest of the schools, we're talking about potentially replacing units. I've talked to you a little bit about a 5-year plan for HVAC replacements. They're all working. They're in good working condition. That's not the issue. So we're looking ahead down the road for energy efficiency, sustainability, et cetera, when we talk about new HVAC units.
Thanks, Randy. Board members, any further comments, discussion? Nope. Okay, great. Well, since this is an action item, can I please have a motion to approve resolution number 20/21-12, authorizing procurement of HVAC controls systems through competitive negotiation?
So moved.
Thank you, Vladimir. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jessica. Any further discussion? Okay. Motion to approve resolution number 20/21-12, authorizing procurement of HVAC control systems through competitive negotiation was made by Vladimir and seconded by Jessica. Let's do a roll call vote. Jessica?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Vladimir?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
I too vote yes. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy, for doing all that. Okay, next item up is a discussion item, resuming in-person board meetings. At our meeting on March 22nd, the board requested time on a future agenda to discuss a timeline for resuming in-person board meetings. Jeff, let you kick it off.
Yes, so we, as you mentioned, Shelley, we discussed previously adding this to the agenda. So I wanted to bring it back for to gather the board's thoughts on this and allow us to begin planning for that based on board direction. So I'm gonna turn it back to you, Shelley, to initiate that conversation.
Okay, great. Should we take public comment since there was, okay. We will now take public comment on this agenda item. To do so, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Requests received after public comment begins will not be accepted. Let me pull up the participants list. We'll give it a few seconds. Okay, any other requests to speak? Great. We have one taker for public comment. Allison, you have 3 minutes.
Our first speaker is
oh, sorry. I just want to say that I'm not ready to go back in person myself, and I've really enjoyed the opportunity to attend via Zoom. It's, really practical with my young children. I went upstairs and put them to bed for a little bit and then came back to the meeting. And I just hope that at least for the next while, we can continue to have these Zoom meetings. I'm not fully vaccinated yet. I'm still waiting for my second shot. So, I wouldn't want to come in person. And yeah, so I just wanted to say thanks for doing them this way. And I hope you'll consider at least finding a way to continue to offer virtual options. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Okay, board members, who wants to kick off this discussion? Jessica?
Yeah, I really like the idea of going back in person, but I feel like it needs to be a hybrid in that we need to find a way to make it Zoom and in-person friendly. I would like it before the end of the school year, but I could settle for the beginning for August if there's no interest within the rest of the board. But I do think there's a way we can, say, jack in our AV system for, say, our microphones that we already have, possibly into one computer where we all shut off our microphones, but we may still have our camera at us, and that we are kept at distances. I don't see it happening in the boardroom per se. I do see us using Zoom and in person, and even possibly in the fall. But I don't know what the fall will look like. I have not read the tea leaves on that.
Thank you, Jessica. Any other comments? Vladimir?
Yeah, I echo Jessica's sentiment. I would like to go back to in-person meetings because I think that one of the difficulties of doing it solely through Zoom is the difficulty of interaction between participants. I also think that we ought to try to figure out a way of maintaining the ability to do Zoom interactions as well, because we've seen that works well. We've seen also that the participation is much larger than normal, and I think that's a welcome feature of Zoom. Yeah, so I think next year is fine to do it. This year, there's too much on your plate to worry about setting all that stuff up. But if we can do it for next year, that would be great. And if we can't, then I would just continue on Zoom for a while.
Thanks, Vladimir. Brian or Steve? Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we're all aware that the high school district is doing sort of hybrid meetings. I confess I have not tried to attend one of their meetings, so I don't know exactly how that system works or how hard it would be for us to adopt it. I think they've got, I don't know if they have more resources than we do around that. So I guess I'd like to see a proposal. I'm open to going back in person, but I would have a strong preference for doing that when we can all be in the same room, because the only thing worse for me than a Zoom meeting is a meeting where half the people are in the room and the other half are on Zoom, and then you're trying to coordinate both ways. I mean, there's a reason why we're not doing Zoom in the room instruction, and I don't really want to do Zoom in the room board meetings either, if there are better alternatives. So, so you know, I'm open, but and I know we'll be thoughtful about it, but I'd like to see some more specifics before I have a strong opinion one way or the other.
I have can I have I have a question for Brian.
Sure.
Did you mean like all of us as a board and the admin? Is that what you meant?
I mean, to be back to those of us who would have been in the room. Yeah, like basically
Okay.
the people I'm looking at here, right? Like the board and the staff, you know, and even, you know, I don't know if there would be issues now. Not that it's necessarily a huge issue, but before, when we had presentations from, you know, third parties like Mr. Pham or others, right? Like they would come and they would present to us, and I don't know whether that would be an option, and we would need to make sure that all that stuff works in sort of a thoughtful way before we switch over.
Cool.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I really miss the presentations from the schools. So, Vladimir, please.
Sorry, just to clarify, what I was envisioning was the board and staff and perhaps even presenters being present in a room someplace, and members of the public being allowed to use Zoom to comment or to comment. That's all.
Thanks, Vladimir. Steve?
Everyone's covered what I'm thinking as well. I'm comfortable with the idea of moving forward. I agree that focus should be on classrooms and making sure that's working well. And I don't want to take resources away from there just to get an in-person meeting going. And I'd like the in-person meetings to be, I still think that to the point that I think Alison made, was the person who spoke about, we have had better participation with at least some Zoom participation in. So at least a balance of that through the remaining of the school year if we move forward quickly, or a leveraging of that as we move into the fall. So either way, I'm open.
Thanks, Steve. Jessica.
I just want to reiterate, I love the amount of participation we're getting in Zoom. And I think we will continue to get more participation if we allow for some sort of hybrid, even when COVID is gone. I can remember many times when I couldn't make a board meeting just as a normal citizen. And I really, because, you know, babysitting, etc., I couldn't get anybody to watch my kids. So I had to stay home and I had to watch from home, but I could not participate. So making our virtual option more robust in the future in general, I think should be a priority. It will allow for more participation / transparency and make us a better district for it.
I agree with Jessica that we should really kind of think of this as a more longer term as opposed to just the next school year, because it has been great to have more parents participate. Pretty much anything that I would have said has been said by my fellow board members, so I don't have anything to add. But yeah, I mean, I would love to see all of you, and if possible, our parents in person again. So,
a quick question for Jeff.
Yes.
Does the CSBA have anything in this area?
What do you mean, have any?
Oh, so have they? Do they have any sort of environment which allows in-person board meetings and Zoom or something equivalent to Zoom?
I don't know. That's not CSBA's bailiwick. They're coming. Everybody's working through right now what the legal implications are of returning in person, because there are still governor's orders where there's some vagueness to language that regarding virtual participation. But in terms of product, no, they don't. But there are There are some examples out there that we can certainly look at. What I want to make sure we're not doing, and that I'm conscious of, is one of the things we made sure our teachers weren't doing was teaching to the people in front of them at the same time as they were teaching kids virtually, because it's really difficult to be responsive to both of those groups. So I want to be conscious of that as well as we do some planning going forward on this.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. My high schooler has had that exact issue. So,
So was my
okay.
wife. Teaching.
Any other comments on this, Brian?
Yeah, can I, it might be interesting, Jeff, as you're thinking about all of this, to look again at what it would cost to do a more responsive system, because, you know, Marcy has a lot to do during our meetings, so I don't necessarily want her to be overloaded. But as I look around at some of the public bodies that use third-party services to do camera selection, to have better quality microphones, I don't know what else, you know, would be in there, right? But if we're going to continue, and I agree with some of the points about continuing remote participation, and so I want to make sure that we're thoughtful about, you know, not asking Marcy to sort of juggle all the stuff that she has to do when we're in person and try to juggle a bunch of people possibly remotely.
Yep.
And so one possible solution might be to see if the costs, I think we've looked at it before and it wasn't really worthwhile. We didn't think at the time, but maybe we should reevaluate whether some of those third parties would be good solutions for.
And costs may have dropped by now too. So we'll see. I will look at that, but I'll put together some thoughts and a plan for the board to react to.
Yeah, because I mean, one of my takeaways is that to do this well, it's going to take hiring somebody as kind of a technology person during our board meetings. And I'd be open to that depending on cost, but I think that's probably what it's going to take to do this.
I think it's right.
All right, thank you. Any other comments before we move on? All right, thanks everyone. Our final agenda item is the CSBA Delegate Assembly runoff election. The Board of Trustees will consider casting a vote in the runoff election for the Santa Clara County Region 20 CSBA Delegate Assembly. Jeff.
Yes, so you have on the agenda. Let me just pull it up. I don't have it up, sorry. Yeah, you have on the agenda the runoff ballot. We will submit a single ballot as a school district, but there's a runoff and there are three candidates, Van Lee from Eastside, Andreas Quintero from Alum Rock, and Bridget Watson from Sunnyvale. And of those three, the board is to vote for two of those candidates. So I will leave it for board discussion to give direction and we get that submitted.
Great. Since there's no presentation, I'm just going to move on to public comment, if that's okay with everyone. We will now take public comment on this agenda item. To do so, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Requests received after public comment begins will not be accepted. All right, let's see if we have any takers. I don't see any hands raised for public comment, so I'm going to go ahead and close it at this point, close public comment. Okay, does anyone want to lead off the, go ahead, Vladimir?
So I believe that I said last time when we had the full slate that my opinion was that any one of the candidates would be fine. And we talked a little bit about some of the candidates, and it dealt mostly about, if I remember correctly, what district they were from, as opposed to the candidate themselves. So I don't have any particular recommendation to make.
Thank you, Vladimir. I do have some thoughts, but I want to hear from everybody else first. Anybody? Okay, I'm just gonna, oh, Brian? Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm trying to remember, I don't know if anybody else has it in front of them, which, if any of these people we voted for the last time.
I think we voted for Bridget Watson. I'm pretty sure we did. And that's who I would lean towards again, because she's a good person. I know her very well. And she's Sunnyvale, so she's kind of up in this area. I know Van Lee. I don't know her personally. I just know of her. I think she's great. However, Eastside Union already has a representative in the Region 20. So that would be the only reason that I would advocate for Andres. But other than Bridget Watson, I personally don't have a strong opinion.
Yeah, I like Bridget Watson, and for the same reason you said, I would actually go for Andres Quintero because there's already an Eastside Union person on there.
Yeah, and there's no Alum Rock person.
Yeah, I think it's better representation.
Yeah, I agree.
I would also agree with Andres and Bridget.
Brian and Steve, do you have any? No? Okay. Well, in that case, may I please have a motion to vote for Bridget Watson and Andres, oh my gosh, Quintero in the runoff.
Seconded.
Second. Any further board discussion? No. Okay. So the motion to vote for Bridget Watson and Andres Quintero was made by Vladimir, seconded by Jessica. Roll call vote. Jessica.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Vladimir.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
I too vote yes. Motion passes unanimously. Good luck to Bridget and Andres. Board and administration comments. Why don't we start with Bandy?
I'll pass.
Okay. Sandra?
Sure. I wanted to let you know, you might remember that we are trying to get approval for our own teacher induction program from the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. There are 4 stages. Your board approval to move forward was stage 1, and our goal was to submit and get approval for stage 2 before the end of the year. So we just submitted everything over spring break. We had a very productive spring break when our schools were quiet. So we got all of our stage 2 work done. We're just waiting to hear. We might need to do a few shifts, but we hope to be approved before the end of the school year. What else? I have been meeting with teachers and principals around our extended learning opportunity grant money to get some feedback on our plans for next year. Reading through our LCAP survey data, again, to inform both our LCAP and our ELO plan, extended learning opportunity plan. Today I met with the great folks at Mentor Tutor Connection. They have their spring celebration tomorrow night, and our Gregory Drummond is their keynote speaker because he has just made great friends and amazing reading fellows from our Mentor Tutor volunteers. So it was wonderful to talk about what further work we can do next year together in that partnership. And just a little FYI, next Wednesday, May 5th, we have our DLAC meeting at 1:30 and our Curriculum Council meeting at 3:30. So we are excited to get our stakeholder groups going. And I think Randy has a budget meeting this Thursday at 3:30. You're welcome, Randy. That's it for me.
Great. Thank you, Sandra. Jeff?
Sandra covered everything.
Awesome. Jessica?
Not much to add. Just wanted to let you know, last Wednesday, CSA officially took over the distribution of Los Altos Community Gives Back food pantry at Klein Park. It's quite literally, everything's the same schedule. It's just that they're doing it and they know how to do it much better. We're still have the same volunteers, including myself, because I've enjoyed doing it, and actually now I get to learn from them. But we still take donations, etc. But I'm just so glad.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
No, that was a big effort, and it's a worthy cause.
And for the most part, Covington has gotten its multi-back, so they're happy about that too.
Awesome. Thank you. Steve?
I think Sandra covered everything.
Brian?
Not much. I've been following along with the Los Altos City's Complete Streets Commission process. They're updating all of the safe routes to school and the walk and roll maps. I think those should be posted for comment from our school communities soon. So I'll probably send out an email through Jeff once that's up so that we can all go.
Yeah, that's
look at
coming
those
soon,
and
Brian. I just so you know, we Sandra and I met with consultant from Alta and Jaime last week. I think it was last week. It was last week. And yeah, we got the current versions of all the safe routes to school maps, and those are out to principals and going out to PTAs as well as that gets moving.
Awesome.
Great, thank you, Brian. Vladimir?
I think Sandra covered most of it, but I wanted to add that I'm very pleased, looking forward to graduation ceremonies. And I would ask Jeff, please make sure that it doesn't rain.
That's just one more thing he's got to take care of. It's the
I think
weather.
it only rains at Block. It doesn't rain at Egan.
I would like it not to rain at Block because, you know, I have a child there.
I'm going to
Ask
pass.
Sandra to get on that because they'll get done that way. Yeah.
Right?
All right. Great. Good night, everyone. Thank you for hanging in there and have a great evening.
Thank
Meeting
you.
adjourned.
Bye-bye.